Hello and welcome to Culture Pop Remix number 17. I'm your host, Orrin Merton, and this is just going to be a short, spoiler-free review of Avengers Infinity War. Now, I want to do a longer panel discussion of this movie because there's a lot to unpack, and it is really quite something. But I also wanted to sort of jump on the momentum that the movie has, because for those of you who don't read the trades, the movie has apparently just made all the monies. It's the number one domestic opening in the United States of all time. In fact, it just beat Star Wars The Force Awakens to be number one. I think it's already made $630 million worldwide. So in other words, this movie has made more in one weekend than almost all movies make ever. So, yeah, that's where we are with this movie. And I just wanted to quickly jump on and just give you some impressions of if it's worth seeing or not. I'm betting a lot of you, if not all of you, who listen have already seen it. But for those of you who haven't, I am committed to making this short one spoiler-free. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change that. I'm going to give one tiny spoiler at the very end of this review. And I'll mark it for those who truly want to go in knowing nothing. And that's tough these days, man, because even the release schedule of future Marvel movies, in a sense, is a spoiler. Even just seeing trailers is a spoiler. You know, everything can be a little bit of a spoiler. So even in my case, I avoided all the articles and all the Twitter chatter and everything about the movie. So I walked in pretty blank, and I'm glad I did. But it's not like I knew absolutely nothing. Plus, some of it is just business reality stuff that you know. And it all plays into it. But I'm not going to tell you about plot points or what character says what to whom. The trailers do some of that, but I'm not going to. So then what am I going to tell you? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you that this movie is really one hell of an achievement. I mean, putting this many heroes in the same movie and giving them all something to do that is worthwhile and that does justice to that character would be so easy to get wrong. It would be so easy to simply focus on a few characters and say, oh yeah, we're including, you know, the entire Marvel universe just to get you all excited, but really this is just a movie that features Iron Man or whatever. That would be so easy to do. But they do not do that. They really make sure that every character has enough to do and enough to say and is important to the story. And that's something that should really be focused on as well. That there is a story here. It's not just fan service for 2 hours and 40 minutes. That there's a real plot. And that is something to be said again. It would be so easy to sort of have no story except we're all in the room together. Isn't that awesome? This is, you know, Marvel fan porn. But it's not. There's a real story here. The villain isn't generic. The villain isn't underpowered for all those characters, so it makes sense that they would need this level of firepower to confront the villain. They didn't blow the visuals or anything like that. I mean, again, there's so many elements that would have kept this movie from being sort of the epic film that it is. And they really nailed it, and they got it right. And that is not something to be taken for granted of. And that is something to see for what it is. So then the question I've been asked directly or had seen other people ask is, what do you need to see? You know, I was asked directly, well, I haven't seen Thor Ragnarok or Black Panther, the recent two Marvel movies. Do I need to see those before I see this one? And that's an interesting question, because this movie clearly is a Marvel movie made for fans of Marvel movies. They've been around long enough, 10 years, that they've figured out they've made enough money that they can make this kind of insular movie And they're not going to be keeping money on the table. That it's not like no one's going to see the film because you have to see other movies. They know everyone saw the other movies, and so they can make this movie, and it'll be fine. So you don't need to see all the movies. I told people, if you haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, you might not understand why Thor has a short haircut and one eye and is in space, but that's okay. You don't need to know that. That's where the movie sort of will fill you in, and that's where the trailers are as well, so I don't feel that's a spoiler. But it's the same with other facets, that you don't need to know every single plot of every single movie, because a lot of the details will be filled in. However, you do need to have a general familiarity with who all the characters are, what they can do, and a general feeling or a general understanding of their arcs, of how they got to this point in time in the Marvel Universe. So you don't need to have seen Black Panther and know all the events of that movie, but you do need to know not only who Black Panther is, but where he is at the start of Avengers Infinity War. And that's true for all the characters. You kind of need to know where they are in the sort of 10-year long-form cinematic story that the Marvel Universe has been telling. So I can recommend this film if you haven't seen all the Marvel movies. But if you haven't seen any Marvel movie, I'm not sure that you're going to get enough out of it. And I do think it is worth seeing if you've enjoyed the Marvel movies. Okay, so what else can I say without giving you any spoilers? There is an after-credit scene. That was a question. Should I stay through the credits? And the answer is there is an after-credit scene that gives you a little bit more kind of juice to the movie. So that's always fun. And I said I was going to give you one tiny, tiny, tiny spoiler. And it's not really a spoiler if you've been paying any attention. But if you haven't and you don't want to know this, maybe it is a spoiler. So here's the spoiler countdown. 3, 2, 1. Okay. The spoiler is, it's been a bit back and forth with Marvel announcing it. But Marvel originally announced that Avengers 3 was going to be Infinity War Part 1, and Avengers 4 was going to be Infinity War Part 2. Then they said, okay, it's not going to be Avengers Infinity War Part 2. And that sort of kind of made people think, oh, well, maybe the movie isn't going to be a two-parter. No, it is a two-parter. They're just not going to call it Avengers Infinity War Part 2, perhaps, and they're going to give it another name. But this is definitely Part 1 of 2. Part 2 is coming out in 12 months after the release of the first one. It's coming out in May 2019, so you don't have to wait 2 or 3 years to see it, but you do have to wait the 1 year to see it. So in a sense, it's a little bit amusing that here we are talking about how great this movie is, but we, in a real sense, don't know how it ends yet. The movie itself has an ending, of course, but it's a cliffhanger because we're waiting for the second one. So anyway, if you did not know that, then, hey, this is brand new stuff for you, and I hope you're okay with that spoiler. If you did know that, you're probably thinking, well, that's not a spoiler. It's written everywhere. But again, this is the kind of movie I think the less you know, the more you'll enjoy it. And this is said from someone who knows every single Marvel movie. I've seen them all. I own the vast majority of them. So go ahead, re-see the Marvel movies if you want to. You don't have to. You should be familiar. But if you want to, go do it. And if you want to avoid everybody talking about the events of this movie, I think you'll get more out of it that way, because it'll be more of a surprise when you do see it. And I'm one of those people who I enjoy these entertainment films. I mean, these are popcorn movies, let's face it. And I really enjoy the surprise. And there were surprises in this movie, and I do think that you'll dig it on that level. of the surprises and the Marvel things. If you're not a fan of Marvel movies, this movie is not for you. You probably heard that it's great and that actors do a wonderful job in it and everything. It's all true. It really is. But if you haven't seen any of the Marvel movies, you're kind of going to be pretty confused about the vast majority of it. So if you don't plan on seeing just at least a lot of the Marvel movies or reading a lot about the Marvel Universe before you see it, you probably don't want to. And that's basically it. That's my short 10-minute spoiler-free review of Avengers Infinity War. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that by the time I get a real panel up to really dig into this movie, because those of us who have already seen it, we know there's a lot to dig into here. I hope that by then everyone has seen it. And, of course, when that is available, I will have spoiler warnings all over it on the text in the beginning of the podcast, everything. So thank you for listening to this little review. If you've enjoyed it, then please leave a nice little comment in the Apple Podcasts app or iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please email me at info@culturepopremix.com if you have any comments or criticisms or suggestions for the future. Be good to yourselves and each other, and I will catch you next time.
Culture Pop Remix.